today we have Professor Kemal Kirişci here with us. He is the TÜSİAD Senior Fellow and also the Director of Turkey Program in Brookings Institution. Dear Kemal, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for being here. Let's start with the first question on Turkey-US relations, because there's a very important tension going on in Syria. Turkish troops are there. There are possibilities of certain, like, facing each other with the American forces there. There are speculations, and the Turkey experts all around the world, they are talking about the possibility of a rupture between Turkey and the United States. What do you think about it? What do you think the future will bring to Turkey-US relations?
I join those who are very concerned and fear that the Turkish military intervention into the northwestern corner of Syria, known as Afrin, may escalate towards a confrontation with the American military that is present further to the east of Syria. The Turkish president has advocated the idea that once the intervention into this corner of Syria is completed, there's a presence of special forces, US special forces, cooperating closely with the YPG. This is the military branch of an organization that controls and governs pretty much the whole of northern Syria and towards the southeastern corner of Syria, where the Islamic State had its state. And the American government has chosen to work very closely with these Syrian Kurdish groups and organizations to push ISIS into this southeastern corner of Syria along the border with Iraq. The United States' focus is on defeating ISIS for good, whereas Turkey's focus right now is this threat to Turkey's national security emanating from these organizations that are very closely linked to the PKK, to the Kurdish separatist organization that has advocated a secessionist, a separatist agenda since basically the mid-1980s, and has also used terrorism against Turkish state but also civilian targets. So there is a mismatch of priorities and interests between two countries that otherwise have been allies since right after the Second World War. And the concern here is not just for Turkey and the United States, but that if this confrontation occurs and a rupture takes place between the two countries, that this could have dire consequences for NATO as an alliance at a time when Russian influence not only in Syria is increasing and shaping the possible end in Syria, the possible final outcome of the Syrian civil war, but Russia is increasingly influencing a big geography in Europe, Eastern Europe, not only in the near abroad, but also in the part of Eastern Europe that became members of NATO and the European Union. So the issue is much bigger than just Turkish and US interests clashing there.
Yeah, you made a good point there, because this, all this tension, all these clashes, or the mismatch, as you underline, is also causing an increasing anti-Americanism and increasing anti-Western sentiments in in the Turkish public opinion. I would like to connect from here to your perception on the other side of the coin of the Western relations. What do you think about the current situation of Turkey and the European Union?
There has always been a degree of skepticism towards the West in Turkey. It's a long tradition, it has a long history to do with what happened to the Ottoman Empire and the establishment of the Turkish Republic. However, for a long time, the dominant political paradigm in Turkey was that Turkey had a Western vocation. It would aspire to become like a European country where you have liberal democracy, where you have liberal markets, where you have modernity, secularism, and the rule of law. And Turkey's engagement with Europe and also the United States after the Second World War was an engagement that aspired to bring this about. And I would argue that this reached its peak and Turkish-Western relations became best when Turkey became a candidate for EU membership, followed by Turkish reforms, that very important political and also economic reforms that opened the way to Turkey's membership negotiations with the European Union. However, by the time these negotiations began to take off, the mood in Europe began to change from one which was open to the idea of a reformed Turkey joining the European Union to one that became nervous, restless about admitting a country that is overwhelmingly Muslim in its religion. And that started to disappoint the Turkish public. The Turkish public was always, and to a certain degree, a lesser degree, still wanting to become a member of the European Union, but the public at large have lost the belief that Turkey would be allowed to become a member of the European Union, even if it was to meet that criteria. That disappointment has become, in the domestic political context of Turkey, a tool for mobilizing nationalism hand in hand with anti-Westernism, and what that has translated into in foreign policy is the advocacy of the idea that Turkey should have closer relations with Russia, with Iran, and begin to look in a different direction than the West, as it traditionally used to do.
Thank you very much. Connecting all this to my last and very speculative question, should we expect early elections in 2018?
According to the referendum that was held in April last year, which adopted amendments to the Turkish constitution, transforming Turkey from a parliamentary political system, to a presidential one, elections are supposed to be held both for the parliament but also for the president in 2019. However, there are growing discussions and debates in Turkey, in the public, that the current president of Turkey may call for early elections because the intervention into Syria and the kind of discourse that has been adopted in Turkey that takes such a critical view of the West is very popular. And even the part of the Turkish public opinion that politically would not support Erdogan is supportive of that intervention and that operation. And right now the Turkish economy seems to be doing okay, but there are signs coming from the Turkish economy that the performance of the Turkish economy may not last well for very long. And when these factors are put together, there are speculations that the president may call for early elections in the summer, and even choose the date when the coup attempt occurred in 2016, the 15th of July, because in Turkey there is a large consensus critical of the coup attempt, and then the support that was extended to the government that was the democratically elected government of Turkey. So a combination of these calculations and considerations is leading some to speculate that an early election might be called. However, time will tell whether this is going to be the case or not. Another factor that I think fuels this debate about a possible early election is the way in which the opposition is very weak and disorganized, which people believe would further strengthen the hand of the Turkish president if he was to run an early election.
Thank you very much for sharing with us your opinions. It looks like all the Turkey analysts around the world will be very busy also in 2018 and in 2019. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you. Thanks.